Welcome back to the deep dive. This time we're taking on Gustavo Adolfo Bécquer's The Mountain of Souls. I'm really excited about this one.
A classic for sure.
And spooky. We're diving deep into the Spanish masterpiece to help you unravel all its secrets.
It's considered a masterpiece of both Gothic and Romantic literature.
Well, that's why we chose it. It's got everything. Medieval Spain, ghostly nights, a forbidden mountain, and a tragic romance.
Critics compare Bécquer to Edgar Allan Poe, and I can see why.
Talk about a recipe for a classic chiller. But it's more than just a ghost story, right?
Oh, absolutely. Bécquer goes beyond simple chills. He uses all those elements, especially the setting and time period, to explore some pretty deep themes, like the consequences of our actions, guilt, obsession. It's woven right into this haunting tale.
Okay, so let's set the stage a bit. Remind everyone about the main characters. We've got Alonso, a nobleman,
Right, and his cousin Beatrice.
and Alonso tells the legend of the Mountain of Souls, this place where the spirits of knights slain in some brutal battle are said to roam.
It's fascinating how Bécquer uses Spanish folklore to create that atmosphere of dread. This was the Romantic era, don't forget. Death and the supernatural held a powerful fascination then.
Adds a layer of historical context to the story.
For sure.
Then there's that blue ribbon. Beatrice loses it on the mountain, and Alonso, smitten as he is, decides to go get it back. Pretty bold move.
Bold, or maybe driven by obsession more than true love. It makes you wonder, what's driving him? Is it genuine or just this infatuation, trying to impress?
I can see that.
Bécquer really captures the dangers of unrequited love and how it leads us down those perilous paths.
Paths that don't always lead back. Alonso never returns from the mountain, of course.
Which just fuels that mountain's chilling legend. Then we have the truly spine-tingling moment. Beatrice discovers the blue ribbon back in her room the next morning, and it's stained with what looks like blood. She's so shocked that it actually leads to her death. Talk about creepy.
Totally. And the way Bécquer presents it leaves us wondering, are those supernatural forces real? Or are they just manifestations of guilt, a tormented mind playing tricks?
Exactly. He plays with that ambiguity so well. Blurs those lines between reality and psychology. That's a quality he shares with Poe, tapping into those deep-seated fear we all have.
He's a master of suspense.
Absolutely. And that blurring of lines, it's key to understanding what Bécquer's really getting at here. Like with the mountain itself, it's not just a spooky setting. It's a barrier between the known world and the unknown.
Whoa, I like that.
It makes you think, right? Alonso's drawn to that barrier, that danger, even if it means breaking social norms, risking everything. Why?
So the mountain becomes a symbol of his internal struggle between what society expects and what his heart wants. Wow, that's fascinating.
It is. And then there's that blue ribbon. It also seems to hold more significance than we realize at first.
More than just a pretty accessory.
Right. Think about it. It starts as something innocent, almost frivolous, right? Representing Beatrice's vanity, all those superficial things she seems to value. But as the story progresses, it transforms, becomes something much darker.
Okay, I'm following.
It represents Alonso's sacrifice, and, in the end, Beatrice's overwhelming guilt. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it, how appearances can be deceiving, how objects take on new meaning as the story unfolds?
It's like he's challenging us to look beyond the surface, to peel back those layers of meaning he's woven into the story.
Exactly. And those ghostly nights, they add to the creepiness, but they're also deeply symbolic. They're not just spooky figures floating around.
So what do you think they represent?
Those unresolved conflicts of the past. The weight of history that haunts individuals, even entire societies. A constant reminder, the past is never truly gone. The sins of our ancestors can cast a shadow on us all.
Bécquer seems to be saying we can't escape the consequences of our actions, both our own and those who came before us. Especially relevant for 19th century Spain, don't you think? A society grappling with its own turbulent history.
And it resonates today. We're still dealing with the legacies of past conflicts and injustices. Bécquer's work is still so relevant, even for a modern audience.
Absolutely. So much to uncover, so many layers to this story. We've only just begun to scratch the surface.
And we're about to dig even deeper.
We were talking about how the Mountain of Souls has this psychological depth to it, even connecting to some of Freud's ideas. I'm curious about that. What makes you say that?
Well, think about Beatrice again. Remember how we talked about the blue ribbon and her vanity? Freud might say she's a classic narcissist. Captivating, yes.
Yeah.
But incredibly self-absorbed.
Right.
Using her charm to manipulate Alonso, pushing him into danger just to get what she wants.
It's more than just getting that ribbon back, isn't it? It's about her need for control, getting her own way, no matter the cost.
Exactly, and that's what leads to her downfall, right? Bécquer seems to suggest that her guilt over Alonso's disappearance, it just manifests as this overwhelming terror, a psychological breakdown.
And ultimately her death.
Yeah.
Wow. That makes me think about Alonso, too. His motivations. We talked about Freud's death drive. Could you explain that a bit more?
Yeah.
And how it applies to Alonso?
Sure. So Freud believed that alongside our life instinct, that drive for survival and pleasure, humans also have a darker impulse, a pull towards death and self-destruction. He called it thanatos.
Okay.
Thanatos. And in Alonso's case, that drive, that pull, is intensified by his longing for Beatrice, that desperate, unfulfilled longing.
So you're saying his reckless pursuit of the blue ribbon, risking everything for her, might actually be a subconscious desire for self-destruction.
It's definitely a possibility. Imagine that feeling, right? Consumed by a love that's not returned. Maybe for Alonso, the Mountain of Souls becomes this place where he can confront his own mortality, literally and figuratively, seeking escape from the pain of those unfulfilled desires.
It's subtle, though, the way Bécquer presents all of this. On the surface, Alonso's this romantic hero, risking it all for love. But underneath, there's this darker psychological element.
Exactly. And that complexity is what makes this story so much more than a spooky tale. It's a psychological drama exploring those hidden depths of human motivation. We've also talked about the ghostly nights, representing the weight of the past, those unresolved conflicts. It's like he's saying we can't escape the consequences of our actions. But is there more to it? Is Bécquer making a statement about society itself?
I think so.
Remember, he was writing in 19th century Spain, a society undergoing huge transformations, but also wrestling with its past. Those nights could be that burden of history, how past events, even buried ones, continue to shape the present. They're like a reminder that societies, like individuals, carry the weight of their actions too.
It's not just individual guilt and responsibility, then. It's a collective reckoning with the past.
Yeah.
Incredibly relevant today, wouldn't you say? We're still dealing with the legacies of past injustices, those shadows of history.
Exactly. We can't ignore or bury the past. It shapes us, both individually and collectively. That's the reminder the Mountain of Souls gives us.
It's a powerful message, for sure. Now, thinking about the story's message, do you think Bécquer offers any guidance? Any lessons we can take away?
He doesn't preach, exactly, but there are some compelling warnings there. Think about Beatrice, her tragic end. It reminds us of the danger of vanity, of letting superficial desires control us.
And Alonso, that blind devotion to Beatrice, risking his life for a love that wasn't fully returned.
It's like a cautionary tale, right?
Yeah.
About self-preservation, recognizing when a pursuit might be leading you down a dangerous path.
Right. The Mountain of Souls suggests that we need to be mindful of what we desire, to really examine our motivations. Are we pursuing something worthwhile, or are we driven by something that could lead to our own destruction?
It's easy to get caught up in those desires and ambitions, though. This story really makes you stop and think, are these things really worth it? Are they aligned with what truly matters? Precisely. And that's one of the most crucial takeaways, I think. Bécquer wants us to be aware of those darker impulses that drive us, to examine our motivations, to make sure those mountains we're climbing are really worth the climb.
That's a really powerful message. But it's not all on the individual, is it? Bécquer also seems to be pointing at those societal norms and expectations that can lead to these outcomes. Think about Alonso and that pressure to prove his masculinity, to win Beatrice's favor, even if it means undertaking this dangerous task.
That's an excellent point. Bécquer is subtly critiquing those societal structures that push individuals, especially men, into these harmful behaviors. It makes us question those expectations, how they limit our choices, even lead to destruction.
It adds another layer, doesn't it? It's not just a ghost story, a psychological thriller, a historical piece. It's a critique of those social forces that shape us, for better or worse.
Exactly. It's what makes the Mountain Souls so rich, so multifaceted. This complex interplay between individual choices, psychology, societal pressures, and the enduring power of the past.
Incredible how much Bécquer packs into this seemingly simple tale. And his writing style, it's so evocative, it pulls you right in.
It's that language, right? He uses such vivid imagery, sensory details to create this atmosphere of dread and suspense. You can practically feel the chill, hear those leaves rustling as you read.
And the way he explores these complex emotion psychological states, it's all so real, relatable, even though it takes place in this heightened supernatural world.
It speaks to his skill. He's not just trying to scare us, he's inviting us to experience the world through his characters' eyes, to feel their anxieties, their desires, to understand those forces that drive them towards their fateful encounter with the Mountain of Souls.
It's no wonder The Mountain of Souls has become such a classic.
It really is a testament to Bécquer's legacy as a master storyteller. His work continues to resonate with readers today, offering these insights into the human condition that are just as relevant now as they were back then.
We've covered so much, but there's always more, isn't there?
Oh, absolutely. A story like this, so rich and layered, it invites so many interpretations, rewards careful reading and thought. You can always discover new depths.
Before we get to any final thoughts you have, I want to talk a bit more about Bécquer's writing itself. You mentioned how captivating it is. How does he create that chilling, immersive experience for the reader?
It's his masterful use of language, the way he paints these vivid pictures with his words. It draws you right into the heart of the story, makes you feel like you're right there alongside the characters.
And he isn't afraid to go deep into those complex emotions and psychological states. His characters feel so real, so relatable, even when they're in these extraordinary supernatural situations.
Exactly. That's what elevates this work beyond just a horror story. Bécquer's not just trying to frighten us. He wants us to think, to feel, to engage with those deeper questions about human nature that he's raising.
It's brilliant. No wonder The Mountain of Souls has become such a cornerstone of Spanish literature. It continues to fascinate and intrigue readers to this day.
It's a real testament to his talent and his enduring legacy as a storyteller.
Well, I think we're ready to wrap up this deep dive.
I think we've explored the depths of this tale quite thoroughly.
But before we go, I'd love to hear your final thoughts on The Mountain of Souls and what you think Bécquer might be trying to tell us with this haunting, evocative story. So, after this deep dive, what are your final thoughts on The Mountain of Souls? What do you think Bécquer was trying to tell us with this, well, chilling tale?
I think it's safe to say that Bécquer created a story that really works on multiple levels. It's a ghost story, yeah, filled with suspense, spooky elements, all that. But underneath, you find this exploration of psychology, the consequences of our choices, and the impact of the past.
You said before that it feels timeless. Why is that?
It's those universal human fears, right? Fear of the unknown, guilt and desire, trying to make sense of death. These are anxieties we all face no matter when or where we live.
We all have our own mountains to climb, in a sense.
Exactly. Just like Alonso's decision to climb that mountain led to tragedy, we might be tempted to climb our own mountains, driven by things like ambition, vanity, those unfulfilled desires we were talking about. What do you think some of those mountains are for us today?
That's interesting, I guess. It could be that pursuit of status or wealth,
Yeah.
that desire for power, even if it means hurting others to get it. Those can definitely lead us down some pretty dangerous paths.
And Bécquer's story, it serves as this cautionary tale, right? He reminds us to really think about those choices we make, the paths we choose. Are we considering the consequences, not just for ourselves, but for the people around us too?
It's so easy to get swept up in it all, though. Those ambitions, desires, the mountain of souls. It makes you pause and ask, are these things really worth it? Are they aligned with what truly matters?
Exactly. And that's a key takeaway, I think. Bécquer isn't preaching at us, but he's asking us to be more aware of those impulses that might be driving our actions. He's challenging us to examine those motivations to make sure those mountains we choose are actually worth the climb.
Such a powerful message. A great way to sum it all up. This has been a truly enlightening conversation. I know our listener has a lot to think about. But before we go, any final thoughts you'd like to leave them with?
If the Mountain of Souls is this allegory for the dangers of vanity and obsession, what are our modern-day mountains of souls? What are we tempted to climb? Are there things we pursue, status, wealth, power, that might lead us down dangerous paths? What are the consequences if we succumb to those temptations? For ourselves and others, those are all questions worth thinking about. And if anyone wants to delve deeper into Bécquer's work, I highly recommend his Legends. It's a collection of these really evocative tales. They explore the mysteries of the human heart, those shadows of the supernatural world.
That's a great recommendation. I'll definitely be checking that out. And to our listeners, thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the Mountain of Souls. We hope you enjoyed exploring this masterpiece with us. Remember, the most fascinating journeys are often the ones that lead us to those unexpected depths. Until next time, happy reading.